All right, I celebrate a little bit of a victory today. I think it's important to recognize what goes right and what goes wrong when we make our goals and to take it one step at a time. So I'm celebrating a very big stepping stone today. One of my goals in 2021 was to listen more and to speak less. I have a tendency to interrupt conversations that are kind of going sideways or going the wrong way. In my mind, that is. Usually, there's still a lot to be gained, even when the conversation has gone off of what you initially intended to hear. I had a big problem last year at the beginning of the pandemic. I had gotten some bad news at my workplace. I'm an adjunct professor, and we lost a lot of students. And my instinct when I heard the bad news was to interrupt by saying, by bragging about some achievements that I had and why I would be qualified for the courses that we still had left, to teach the courses we still had left. And so I bragged about some machine learning that I had been programming. Now the problem is I interrupted my dean. She had said that, we lost these courses, and I didn't let her finish that thought. Had I let her finish that thought, I might have gotten some concession out of it, right? Who knows? When people talk, they tend to give things away, right? It's kind of the way I like to view it is, you're playing poker, right? Or actually Rummikub is probably a better analogy, and your opponent is handing you cards. And the more cards you can accumulate before you form your hand, the better hand you can form, right? If you accumulate 20 cards, 30 cards, there's a better chance that there's a royal flush in there than if you stopped at 6 or 7 cards because you got excited about a 3 of a kind that you might have gotten, right? That's the analogy I like to use in my head before I interrupt people. Okay, now getting back to today, Seattle goes back into phase 2 on Monday, unfortunately, which means that I have some liberty to leave the area because I won't be able to work with my students in person. It's a mixed bag. I love working with the students remotely. The students get a lot more out of it. At the same time, it ties me to Seattle. It makes my workday a whole lot longer than it needs to be because I have to commute. It's a mixed bag, and I get to live somewhere else, especially if I get to live in the central time zone or mountain time zone. Actually, it's an hour ahead of Seattle, and I like the schedule that way. But I was calling a hostel that I wanted to stay at to see if they have a longer term rate, and I left a message. Would you please call me back? I'd like to find out about a long-term rate. And I kept it at that. I didn't go on and on and on and on about how I work remotely and all that, what I do for a living. I used to make that mistake. I left it at 2 sentences. I'm looking for a long-term stay. Could you call me back? Okay, and I left it at that. And the owner calls me back just 5 minutes ago, and I say hello, and he says, "Yeah, I'm calling you back." Oh, great. Yeah, I was trying to find out about a long-term stay, what the rate would be. Period. Not, I'm thinking about moving this day, and I might have to extend it if Seattle continues to be in lockdown. Blah 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 blah. See, when you do that, you give your opponent cards to form their royal flushes with, right? So I resisted the temptation to do that. Now the owner, he started by saying, "Well, if it's 2 weeks." As soon as I heard 2 weeks, I got nervous because I'm looking for a lot more than 2 weeks. I'm not going to drive, 2 states away in order to stay 2 weeks. But I let him finish that thought. And he goes on to say that, we got to know ahead of time, this much ahead of time, how much it would be. He goes on to describe the amenities, which is good, right? Because it gives me information about what might work and what might not work, what I need to negotiate next. The amenities sounded nice. The main problem was the 2 weeks, obviously. But I let him ramble, because as he's rambling, he might give some sort of concession, right? Whether it be on the price, whether it be on the availability, and all that, right? And he did. He then quoted a private room, so I got to compare a little bit. So I let him finish, and I said, well, that's a little too bad, because I'm looking for probably more than 2 weeks. He said, oh, no, you can extend it if it's right. And I didn't want to mess it up. So I said, well, okay, I'll think about that. It's going to be at least sometime anyhow. And so that was good. I resisted the temptation to sell. In the past, it would have gone like this. Well, for 2 weeks, oh no, I'm looking for more than 2 weeks. Right? I would have short-circuited all those concessions that he was prepared to give me. Anyways, I'm pleased about that. So think about the analogy with the poker hands the next time you're tempted to interrupt, right? The more cards you can accumulate before you play your hand, the better hands you can form.